Officer Waldman, thank you for being with us today. Could you state your name for the jury and for the record, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Edward Waldman.
And Officer Waldman, could you tell us in your own words, explain what happened on December 6th and going into December 7th of 1996, please?
Yes, sir. It was 1997. But what happened was Officer Levy, my partner, and I had been dispatched to go and investigate a burglary that was happening. When we got to the scene, we didn't see anyone, and so we began to drive around looking for any suspicious activity, see if we could spot the suspect. It ended up that we didn't see anyone for a while, and we're just driving. But then all of a sudden, this car came out of nowhere, just came bearing down on us really fast. Of course, we were going a little under the speed limit, looking for people. And but this guy came up flashing his lights and honking his horn and driving pretty wild and swerving into oncoming traffic. So we pulled over and let him pass. But he didn't pass. He got out and started yelling, and eventually he knifed my partner Levy in the shoulder, and I got out just in time before he knifed him again and was able to shoot him in the shoulder. Now, when you say knife him, you're referring to the fact that he stabbed him. You say he stabbed him. Do you know which shoulder was it that he stabbed him in? Oh, he stabbed my partner in the right shoulder. So it was the right shoulder, and you had seen an altercation going on between Officer Levy and Mr. Ramirez. Is that correct? That's right. When we pulled over, he stopped his car too in front of us and jumped out and attacked Officer Levy. Now, when you say attacked him, he came directly up to him, and what happened? Jumped out of his car, ran right at him, started hitting, fighting. They rubbed up against the car. I jumped out and was coming around the car to stop it myself. Now, so you had jumped out. When did you first see that Officer Levy had been stabbed? Did you actually see the stabbing? I did. I stepped out of the car and could see right over the car. He lifted the knife up above his head and plunged it into him. So you actually saw the knife go into Officer Levy? I did. Which is interesting, because in your deposition you said that you saw it touch up against his clothes, but you never saw it go actually into his person. But we'll move on from there. You said that you actually got up and you took a look around and kind of looked around to ascertain the situation before you decided to go to help Officer Levy out. Is that correct? Just a second. Just a second. So you were just going to take a peek around and look around a little bit for a second before you found out what you needed to do. And then what did you do? You came around the car as fast as I could to help him out. Okay, and at that point, which direction was Mr. Ramirez facing? Well, he had my buddy pinned up against the car, and so his back was to me. Okay. Which also is confusing and interesting, because Officer Levy said that in his deposition that he had Mr. Ramirez pinned up against the car, and Mr. Ramirez was facing you, not with his back to you. So I wonder if you might be able to explain that. Well, it happened really fast, but I know where I shot. Happened really fast, but everything was kind of a blur. You weren't exactly sure which direction everyone was facing. Is that correct? Well, I know I came up behind him. Okay, so you came up behind him. Right. And he was standing, or was he laying down? He was standing. He was standing up, and at that point, what made you decide to shoot him? Well, at that point he lifted his hand and looked like he was going to knife Officer Levy again. Okay, so he lifted his hand up. Where was Officer Levy's hands? What was Officer Levy doing at the time that Mr. Ramirez looked like he was lifting the knife up again? At that point, he was struggling. He just grabbed his wrist. Okay, so Officer Levy was holding
Mr. Ramirez's wrist.
That's right.
And it looked like it was going to get out of hand, or why did you decide that you instead of grabbing him and helping him out, why did you decide to go and draw your weapon and shoot him?
Well, I was going to try to stop him myself. Thought the two of us could hold him down, but I saw my partner's hand starting to slip and the knife was coming down. I just didn't have time to get there.
So you didn't have, you were a foot or two away, but you didn't have time to get there, so you drew your weapon instead.
That's right.
And you decided to shoot him. Okay. Well, thank you, Officer Waldman. Appreciate your being here, and thank you very much.
Thank you.